You may have noticed that, on this channel, we really stan the ARC Troopers. You may be able to tell by the hordes of videos we've made on them, which you can find here, here, over here, here as well, and let's not forget this one over there. Unlike us and the Jedi, however, everyone else hated them, and for good reason. That is, if you consider grand conspiracy plots a good reason. In today's video, we're going to talk about ARC Troopers and why they were so distrusted by many, especially Supreme Chancellor Palpatine.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
When designing the clone troopers, the Kaminoans had very specific goals in mind. They wanted an army of highly skilled super soldiers that took well to receiving orders, worked well as a team, and thought like a collective. For the most part, they succeeded. Regular clone troopers, and even the clone commandos, were heavily modified clones of Jango Fett. These genetic modifications aimed to improve their physical attributes and skills, but the Kaminoans didn't stop there. They wanted to mold the clone troopers into an obedient army whose loyalty was unwavering. The goal was for every clone to be identical both physically and mentally. As a result, the regs were conditioned to develop uniform personalities. All clone troopers were raised to see each other as brothers. Rather than consider themselves individuals, they saw themselves as part of a whole. They formed close bonds with their squad mates and the Jedi they served under. For an example of this, look no further than the respect and loyalty the 501st showed Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano. The Kaminoans' obsession with perfection was especially evident in the regs. They were perfect, obedient, and uniform soldiers that would do their duty even if that meant dying for the good of the mission or the safety of their squad. This is where the ARC Troopers didn't fit in. We've discussed the 4 different generations of ARC Troopers the Kaminoans produced in previous videos, so we won't go over them in detail again. But what the first 2 had in common was that, unlike the regular clone troopers, the ARC Troopers were almost identical to Jango Fett, with only a few modifications to improve their physical performance. With no modifications to alter their behavior, the ARC Troopers grew to resemble Jango Fett in behavior almost to a fault. At least if you ask the Kaminoans. This was even more pronounced in the second generation of ARC Troopers who were trained by Fett himself, leading them to display even more of his personality traits. Combined, these factors resulted in highly individualistic, independent soldiers who worked best alone or in small groups. They were incredibly skilled and needed hardly any supervision to get the job done. Even their behavior was different from the regs. Much like Jango Fett, they were creative, and that creativity made them unpredictable. The latter 2 generations of ARC Troopers weren't bred to be similar to Jango Fett. They were regular clone troopers, such as Echo or Fives, who showed great potential and were subsequently promoted into the ARC Corps. Even though these later ARC Troopers didn't differ genetically from the average clone trooper, they were still trained by Alpha 17, a second generation ARC Trooper trained by Fett. Their extreme conditioning definitely affected the clone troopers' mentality. This set later ARC Troopers apart from other clone troopers even if their base genetics were identical. So why was this such a problem for some people? The Jedi certainly didn't seem to mind the ARC Troopers' rebellious nature. In fact, they embraced it. Many Jedi were uncomfortable with the clone troopers' hive mind mentality and actively encouraged them to embrace their individuality. Plo Koon, in particular, supported the clones differentiating themselves from each other. In this way, ARC Troopers were a welcome breath of fresh air. Among the Jedi, they behaved like real people instead of puppets. This, however, in the end, was the root of the problem. If you stop to think about it, it's really no surprise that both the Kaminoans and the Supreme Chancellor were wary of the ARC Troopers, given what we know about their motives. As for the Kaminoans, their concerns were twofold. Firstly, the ARC Troopers offended the Kaminoan sense of perfection. While they respected Jango Fett as the ultimate human specimen, their ultimate goal was creating a perfect, predictable army that would outperform any traditional force, whether that was made up of droids or organic. The ARC Troopers were far from the image of that perfectly obedient super soldier, and the Kaminoans took this personally. The second reason was even simpler: profit. Above all, the Kaminoans wanted to remain the #1 supplier of elite troops in the galaxy. For them to remain relevant, they needed their exported product to be efficient and reliable. Unruly troopers gave their entire operation a bad rap, and particularly problematic units quickly became a thorn in the Kaminoans' side, as this called the quality of their clones into question. For example, after the rise of the Galactic Empire, Kamino had great difficulty convincing Grand Moff Tarkin that Clone Force 99, another clone squad well known for their unconventional attitude, was worth keeping around despite being a liability. The ARC troopers were no exception to this Kaminoan prejudice against independent and individualistic clones. Their loner nature and propensity for getting into trouble greatly alarmed the Kaminoan. Their concern was that they wouldn't be able to control them, and anything that wasn't within their complete control was a risk. This prejudice was taken to the extreme. The second generation of ARCs we mentioned earlier, the Alpha Class ARC troopers, were barely allowed to complete their training before they were locked in suspended animation. They were only reanimated when Tipoca City was attacked, and the Kaminoans called on them in a last-ditch effort to defend their home. As much as we disagree with the Kaminoans' attitude toward the ARC troopers, we expected nothing less from a group of credit-hungry cloners. Even with their selfish motivations, however, their reasons for despising the ARC troopers were still far better than the Supreme Chancellors. As we mentioned, the Kaminoans were concerned that unpredictable clone units would displease their employer. That employer was, of course, the Supreme Chancellor, who was secretly playing both sides of the Clone Wars like a lonely ping-pong player. It should really come as no surprise then that Palpatine wasn't a huge fan of any clones that didn't toe the line. When he devised his grand plan, he'd needed the clones for two specific things: fighting the Separatists and killing the Jedi. While the ARC troopers were very, very good at that first part, it became increasingly uncertain whether they would be able to do that second bit or whether they'd mess everything up. And to be fair, they almost did. Earlier we mentioned CT-5555, also known as Fives. Fives was a regular clone trooper of the 501st Legion who was promoted to an ARC designation following the Battle of Kamino in 21 BBY. As an ARC trooper, he took part in many decisive battles of the Clone Wars, such as the battles of Lola Seyu and Umbara. It was during the Battle of Ringo Vinda, however, that he set off a chain of events that almost destroyed Palpatine's master plan. During the battle, Five witnessed another clone, codenamed Tup, executing a Jedi General mid-battle. Although no one knew it at the time, this was due to a premature execution of Order 66. Having known Tup well, Fives knew that his fellow clone wouldn't have randomly turned on the Jedi. Even though the official story was that Tup had gone crazy, Fives didn't give up on his investigation, even when it meant infiltrating the Kaminoan medical ward and searching for classified information. It was through persistent investigation that he uncovered a conspiracy plot involving the secret clone inhibitor chips and the plot to execute the Jedi. He even managed to connect the Supreme Chancellor to the conspiracy. Given how much he had uncovered, it was no surprise he was declared a traitor to the Republic, a mad clone like Tup. Despite being hunted down for treason by his fellow clones, Fives kept true to the ARC trooper mentality and pursued the truth. He tried his best to warn the Jedi and the clones, but he was ultimately killed during a standoff on Coruscant. Although his attempt to expose the Chancellor failed, it paved the way for others to uncover the truth. As a result of his actions, many clones removed their inhibitor chips before Order 66, and Ahsoka Tano used what information Fives had disclosed to save Captain Rex. Considering incidents like this, it's clear that Palpatine's fear of the ARC troopers was well founded. Their independence and unpredictable nature led them to defy orders, exactly the opposite of what Palpatine wanted when he was balls deep into his single-player ping-pong game. What do you think though? Did any other ARC trooper get closer to foiling Palpatine's plans than Fives? Let us know all that and more in the comments section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.